Madam Clerk, are we good to go?
Just waiting for the okay from Trevor. Just one sec, please. We're streaming now, Your Worship.
Thank you. If I could get council to come on screen. Thank you. So we'll start. Say welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 57th session of council for Monday, November the 8th. And I note that this is a virtual meeting, and as such, if there is an interruption, any interruption to our members of council's internet connection or the technical trouble, we will pause for a moment to allow that member to reconnect, and assuming we still have quorum, we shall continue in their absence. And I do note that Councillor Porter is on leave and Councillor Townend has sent his regrets for this evening. And so we are called to order at 7:01. This council has been in closed session starting at 6 o'clock this evening to review the closed session minutes from October the 25th. And with regard to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of real property for the municipal or local board purposes within Taylor Kidd Industrial Park. I'm here to report that the closed session minutes were adopted as circulated and direction was provided to staff with regard to the property. At this time, it is time for the playing of the national anthem. I will ask all members to turn off their cameras in preparation for the national anthem. And we acknowledge that we are being hosted on the ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee, Mississauga, and Omami Wenini peoples. We acknowledge and welcome the presence of all Indigenous peoples, including the Métis, Inuit, and other First Nations from across this vast land who also makes this place home. The lands we are on today are recognized in the Two-Row Wampum, Dish with One Spoon Treaty, Treaty 27, and the Crawford Purchase. I could get council to come back on screen. Welcome. We move to open forum. The first 15 minutes of every council meeting is set aside for the open forum, at which time any member may individual may address council to voice opinions on subjects of municipal concern, excluding matters that are subject to a public meeting, i.e. under the Planning Act. And we point out that each individual can only speak once and for no more than 3 minutes, and remind them that this is an opportunity to express your opinion, not to challenge or question staff or council at this time. And notice is hereby given provided that under the authority of the Municipal Act 2001 and in accordance with the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, all information provided for or at the open forum, public meeting, consultation, or other public process are considered to be part of the public record. And Loyalist Township meetings are being held virtually. Therefore, anyone wishing to speak at council can register in advance with the Clerk's Division at the given information. We would ask that any member in the audience who wishes to address this council at this time during the open forum, please use the raise hand function in the Zoom tool and make yourself known to the clerk. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone?
Yes, Your Worship. Pat Finnegan had made arrangements to speak at open forum, so I'll just move him over.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Finnegan. How you doing?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And welcome, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. Call me out at 3 minutes. I've never been given the shorter time to speak in my life. The very first point I'd like to make, if no other point is made, is please do not make a decision on the community safety and well-being pilot project unless you're absolutely convinced that you have all of the information, because in my heart of hearts, I cannot imagine someone fully apprised of all of the information, all of the progress that's been made, all of the effort and all of the passion that's gone into this. I can't imagine somebody turning this down. There have been issues, a timeline has been blown, that can all be perfectly explained away. The second thing I'd like to say is, I need to start at the beginning. When I retired from the OBP in December of 2017, I volunteered to lead Greater Napanee as a community safety wellbeing planning coordinator for free. I agreed to lead that plan. And then what happened is the municipalities decided on a joint plan. And that became much bigger, and I still said I would do it for free, but then Napanee Detachment obtained a grant. And they said, we're going to compensate you because we can't imagine hiring anyone else to do this. So that was fine. And then the detachment commander, Scott Semple, came up with another very innovative idea to even further expand the project to include the hiring, training, and supervision of a situation table coordinator, as well as the potential to have a civilian community mobilization and engagement problem-solving model available to the county. And I won't get into that because I certainly don't have time. So in terms of the delivery of all of this, the community safety well-being plan was due July 1st. That deadline has come and passed. I put the Solicitor General on notice and let them know that due to a pandemic and due to a cancer diagnosis that I received in January, which knocked me out of the play from January until July. I almost lost my life during that period of time, but thank goodness to modern science, I'm on medication now that's righted the ship, and I'm back, and I'm making great strides in momentum. I'm also working with some municipalities in the north that I never planned on working with, but they heard that I was involved in this and they begged for help, and I did what I always do. I say yes. So what was presented to your council on March 2nd, 2020 was a pilot project that was always intended to span 3 years. It was going to be funded on a yearly basis, but the plan was it was a 3-year plan which matched the 3-year grant cycle. And there were 3 major goals: a community safety well-being plan, the situation table coordinator being hired, trained, supervised, and then the mobilization and engagement problem-solving model. And that was always intended not to even begin to be undertaken until year 3. So goal 2 has been achieved with spades. We have a website now. We're on social media now, Instagram and Facebook. Out of the 49 situation tables in the province of Ontario, ours is probably the most professionally run table out there, thanks to what we've been able to do. I started a company at the advice of the CEO of Napanee, hired the coordinator so that there would be no administration efforts, for any of the municipalities. And so So number 2 was knocked out of the park. Number 1 has been delayed, but there's no issue with it being delayed. The Solicitor General's been put on notice. They sent me a letter and congratulated us on our progress and said, good luck with the future. We are not non-compliant. I'll finish in 10 seconds. We are not non-compliant. We're just in progress. And there absolutely is nothing to be worried about. You can't see the house from the road, but if you pull in the laneway, you will find a foundation, a septic tank, and a well, and many things that have been established on your behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. And I do understand, I've met with you and chatted with you a number of times. I know that it was really hard for you to keep that into 3 or 4 minutes. I appreciate that. At this point, I'll turn to council. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Finnegan? And I'll go to the deputy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. Just a couple questions, just for clarification. Loyalist has paid a invoice already in the past. I understood that was for the plan. Was that correct?
No, that's not correct. As I just explained, it was for 3 major goals: delivery of a plan, the hiring of a situation table coordinator, the training of the situation table coordinator, and the supervision of the situation table coordinator, which has all been done. As far as the plan goes, there is substantial work that's been done, foundational work, as a result of the work that I've done with other agencies. So in fact, what you're going to get has been road tested. It's plug and play. It's ready to go. Within 2 weeks, I will stand up the advisory committee. We will, in 2 months, achieve what I was only able to achieve in 18 months with my northern partners, because it's all been developed, designed, tested, and ready to go. I mean, this didn't exist. I had to create this out of nothing. And of course, I had a number of hardships to adjust with along the way.
Yes, and I understand that. And I know there's been delays that have been out of anyone's control over the last, year and a half. And then for you personally, you've had additional ones. So, so you mentioned in your statement, if I may, Your Worship, just continue. You mentioned in your statement that within 2 months, was it that the plan would be complete or virtually complete?
Well, the plan is a very organic thing. So, for example, when we get to the data collection phase, what I encountered in the north was crickets. People struggled with, and Hugh Russell, who's the sort of pioneer of all this, Dr. Hugh Russell, who was the advisor to the government on the legislation, a man that I mentored under for 18 months, will tell you that this is the part that most municipalities struggle with. And so we're still struggling. So when I thought just data would become forthcoming, now I'm sitting down one-on-one with individuals from different agencies, going over what might be relevant data, then packaging, presenting it back to the advisory committee. So, I'd like to tell you that in 6 months from now, we would have a plan on the website. I'd make a commitment to try and do that, but it'll depend on the people in your community that I'm working with. And I don't have any control over that. And I'll just add that we're not the only municipality. There are a number of municipalities who didn't meet the deadline, and municipalities pleaded with the government to extend the deadline. And the deadline was arbitrary, and it's actually meaningless because we're in progress, and that's all that matters.
Okay. If I may, Your Worship, one final one, I believe. We've just received another invoice, and can you just clarify what that invoice is for then? And what I'm looking at is, are we going to need budget items? Is it going to be a budget item going forward if this is the case?
Well, so it was a 3-year pilot. And so what was anticipated was the original invoice was for $28,000. I've reduced the second invoice by $5,000 because I don't see a need for some of the training funding. And I explained that the last time that we met. And so that invoice includes another year. We're 6 months in, and in fact, for the record, the situation tables coordinator salary is being paid out of my pocket right now. So I have 6 municipalities in LNA County that are benefiting from this structure and support and the professionalism that's been brought to the 21 different agencies that sit at that table every Tuesday and try to get upstream on on crisis involving individuals and families, so that we don't have all these downstream emergency service fees. And I've been funding that out of my own money, and that's not your fault. I'm not looking for pity. I'm just looking for understanding. I wasn't able to send out invoices. I laid in bed most of the summer, struggling with a drug that is now curing me and I'm now tolerating, but it literally put me down, and it was an effort to actually get up and go to the washroom. So I lost a good 7 months where I could have made some outstanding progress, and we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. Again, I'm not looking for sympathy, just understanding. But that fee would include continued supervision of the situation table coordinator, continued salary of the situation table coordinator. And of course, what we're about to embark on is training within all of the municipalities in L.A. County. So every school, every organization that sits at the situation table needs to have updated training, because people turn over. There are 3/4 of the officers in the OPP detachment probably don't understand what a situation table is. So you need to continually send that message. So I'm developing training, and I'm going to work with Amanda, and I'll help deliver the training initially, but then she'll go on her own and deliver this to probably 50 or 60 agencies over the next 12 months.
Thank you. Anything
Thank
further,
you.
Deputy?
That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of council have questions for Mr. Finnegan? I'm seeing no further questions. I would highlight that the agenda item that Mr. Finnegan is referring to is, I believe, 15.1 on our agenda this evening. And with that, if there's no further questions, okay, I will say thank you very much, Mr. Finnegan. We appreciate your time and your comments today. And I'm assuming you're going to stick around and watch the agenda as it moves forward.
Yes, and I just add that we're continually looking at possible grants that would allow us to do this work with no cost to any of the municipalities. But right now, what you're paying for is an upstream, collaborative, risk-based prevention model, which is the absolute answer to most community problems. And more communities are embracing this as they go.
Thank you. And that, I will come back to council. If there's nothing further, I would ask for a motion to receive Mr. Finnegan's presentation. Councillor Buderick, so moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gordon, thank you. And I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. And motion is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Finnegan. We'll move forward. Public meeting and notices, there are none. Right. We have the agenda before us. Do we have anything to add to the agenda this evening? Seeing nothing. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Deputy, so moved. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gordon, thank you. Any comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move forward. We move on to delegations and presentations, and I believe this evening we have Ms. Ferlinato from the Cataraqui Conservation Authority. And are we able to bring her in? There's Katrina. Welcome, Ms. Ferlinato.
Thank you. I also have Alan Revel, our chair, with us this evening. I'm hoping if he's able to join us as well.
Good. I'll ask the clerk to bring him in as well.
Just moving over now.
Thank you. There's Mr. Revel. Okay. Welcome, Mr. Revel. I'm hoping you can hear us. Okay. And at this time, I believe you have a presentation, Ms. Ferlinato. Oh, there he is. Welcome, Mr. Revel.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Ferlinato, you have a presentation for us?
I do. And just to confirm, would you like me to share my screen?
And Madam Clerk? Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay. So through you, I'm happy to do so and get started.
Please do so.
Okay, just give me 1 second. Okay, can everyone see my screen okay?
I'm seeing nods. Yes, go ahead.
Excellent, thank you. So good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow council. Again, my name is Katrina Furlanetto. I am the General Manager of Cataraqui Conservation and appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening on our 2022 proposed operating and capital budget. With me this evening, I have our chair, Alan Revel, who will be giving an introduction on the high-level process of bringing this budget together. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Revel.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Katrina.
Carol.
Through you, your worship and members of council, you can hear me, I hope.
Ken, go ahead.
Cataraqui Conservation is continuously working towards a sustainable base budget and have made several program shifts the past few years to meet provincial and municipal requirements. To ensure the organization is able to meet the needs of our 11 watershed municipalities, we are implementing a total compensation plan, which includes annual increases to build a salary grid which is fair and competitive. Earlier this year, the board understood the need for improved office space to retain and attract employees and made the decision to finance a move to leasing space at Frontenac County's administration facilities starting in 2022. We met with you and your CAO in the spring to discuss the financial strategy, and we are within the target level identified. There are also several significant assets such as trails, facilities, water control structures, and bridge infrastructure across the watershed that support tourism, municipal strategic planning, and natural resource management, which require significant maintenance and capital work to meet regulatory requirements. Cataraqui Conservation is mindful of the pressures municipalities are facing and have proposed a responsible, considerate budget to support the needed operating and capital efforts for protection of people and property towards a resilient community. I'll pass it back over to Katrina to provide more detail on the proposed budget.
Thank you, Alan. So as part of our budget development process, we have three main goals. The first being to support our programs to ensure that we can give quality service to our partners, and in particular, our watershed municipalities. We are reducing our reliance on reserves towards our operating budget, as well as continuing to implement our compensation package and our long-term asset management plan. So before I get into some of the numbers, I wanted to take a minute to talk about the value to our watershed communities. So conservation authorities are continuing to protect people and property from natural hazards, and we do that through a variety of different programs. We continue to support municipalities as part of land use planning. We continue to implement the conservation of land, such as wetlands, forests, and other wildlife habitats. And over the last year, it's been incredible to see the number of users that have come out to our properties to be one with nature from a mental well-being, from a learning perspective, from a recreation perspective. And we continue to be a trusted source of information to the community, as well as provide technical advice to our partners, such as our municipalities. Over the last 18 months, we've had a tremendous increase in our planning and permitting role, and we've had an increase in our enforcement and compliance capacity. So we've had to bring in additional staff to help us with that particular volume. We continue to work with our partners to ensure that we can manage our conservation areas to address the volumes of users and continue to ensure that those assets are sustained moving forward. We also have 10 water control structures which we manage, and we're continually implementing recommendations from condition assessments, which we completed several years ago, to ensure that they're meeting the health and safety requirements and meeting the upstream and downstream needs of the watershed. So we'll move on to talk about some of our budget development influences, which are listed here on the screen, and I'll just walk through each one of them briefly. So as part of our budget development process, we continually look for federal and provincial funding opportunities. Some of our programs, such as our Drinking Water Source Protection Program, is primarily funded by the province, and we've been assured that that funding will continue moving into 2022. Over the last several years, there has been uncertainty in these funding opportunities, and we continue to look for grants and other options to address some of the challenges that we have. Unfortunately, conservation authorities are not often eligible, especially for infrastructure grants. So we've been reaching out to our municipal partners and other community stakeholder groups to partner and look for opportunities to acquire some of these funds for some of our similar goals. And we'll continue to do that moving forward. We then have uncontrollable costs, which we've factored into the best of our ability within the budget. For example, the insurance and property taxes have gone up, and so we can continue to flag those as we move forward. We then have our compensation review, which Alan spoke of earlier, and we've been implementing that since 2017 to bring all of our positions up to a job rate, which is a marketable, fair, and equitable rate to retain and attract our key professional employees. For example, we have found that our compensation has been quite low in comparison to municipalities and other organizations this year when we tried to bring in an engineering professional. We tried twice and were unsuccessful. And so next year we'll be entertaining a compensation review update to bring us up to that level where we can retain the qualified services and assure that we can get those professionals in to meet the needs of the watershed. So as part of that compensation review, we also look at the total package, which includes our administration facility. So as Alan mentioned, we met with all of our municipalities earlier this year to talk about a 20-year financial plan to move into a lease space with Frontenac County. So 2022 marks the first year of that particular plan, and it's a transition year. So we would be staying within our current facility while we migrate over once the construction is completed at the county. This space will provide a much better space for our staff from a health and safety perspective, and will also ensure that we can attract and retain our current membership. Then we have our capital asset management program, and we're continually looking to improve our water control structure, maintenance and operations, and our properties specifically. We've got lots of work at our shorelines and are continually working with our municipal partners to make sure that we have sustained plans for these assets moving forward. And then lastly, we have COVID-19. So we've had some successes and we've had some challenges over the last several years. So for fees, we've seen an increase in our self-generated fees at our properties and for our development review, permitting and planning applications. We've seen a decrease in fees when it comes to our education and our recreation programs, as the program stability of those areas was quite low, knowing that we were in lockdown for much of the time. So moving into 2022, we're hoping that program stability for those areas will increase to a more normalized rate, I would say, and that our self-generated revenue would continue at the pace that it's been. So as part of the package that was circulated to council, we included a new document, which is our 2022 budget and business work plan. We pulled this together as an interim annual strategy, and we are using it to support our operating and capital budgets, while also being an education tool to talk about our budget process, the consultation that we have with our municipalities and partners, program details on all of the different services that we offer, as well as the initiatives that we're hoping to highlight and focus on in 2022. So that brings us to the numbers. So if we look at our operating budget, we have proposed a $5.36 million budget, which is an overall increase of 5.8% year over year in expenses. That's been offset quite a bit by those self-generating revenues that I've spoken to as we continue to receive those and project those into the future. We've addressed our uncontrollable expenses to the best of our ability, and we reflect efficiency wherever we can. We've done a line-by-line review of the budget, and we have assumed minimal changes in our programming to ensure that we can meet the needs of the watershed. There is a reserve draw that is included within the budget, and that's to help transition to the new administration facility, which I spoke of earlier. So then we move on to our proposed capital forecast. It is a 10-year fully funded forecast based on current reserves. So we do have projects outside of those 10 years and are continually working on partnerships and funding opportunities to ensure that we can address those projects. The primary revenue source for these projects is our internal reserves, which we are continually trying to build annually as part of our asset management plan. We look for federal, provincial, and external grants as best as possible, and we are looking to implement 137 projects over the next 10 years. Several of those projects are underway, and we're hoping to close many of them in early 2022, such as our signage and some maintenance on the Cataraqui Trail. So in 2022 specifically, we are looking to add 16 new capital projects, such as those that I mentioned for our water control structures, our land management, and some administration studies. So if we look to our overall budget and the general levy equivalent, we have proposed a 4.8% increase, which can be broken down as such as you see on the slide. The 1%, or approximately just over $23,000, would be towards supporting our new administration facility. And we would have this 1% increase over the next several years to help with that transition. We then have our operations, which includes the compensation, a cost of living, as well as uncontrollable costs, as I've mentioned, that roughly equate to about 2.7% of the general levy. And then there's the capital asset management, which will help us address the condition assessment recommendations and the work that we've pulled together over the last several years. And that equates about just 1.1% of the general levy, or the total listed on the screen. So if we look at the proposed 2022 budget from a levies perspective, not only do we have a general levy, but we have special levies for our properties and special levies for our water control structures. So as you can see on the screen, in addition to the general levy, we've also proposed a 1.5% increase for both properties and water control structures to help us address some of those uncontrollable costs, such as insurance, as well as to meet the minimum threshold for health and safety requirements at those particular areas. So if I look at the overall forecast for the organization and all of our 11 municipalities, we receive assessment value from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks based on the previous year's growth for our municipalities, and use that to make a formula to determine how our apportionment will be split. So if we look at Loyalist Township, which is highlighted in red, you can see that the change from 2021 to 2022 comes out to almost $9,000, which is an increase of 4.2%. So if I take those levies and I break them down, you have the general levy, which I spoke to earlier, which supports the operations and regional capital projects. And then you have the special levies, which pertains to mostly our maintenance and operations of our dams, as well as our properties. So for Loyalist Township in 2022, the general levy is listed on the screen, as well as our special levy for properties, which equates to approximately $54,000, and then our special levy for water control structures. As a reminder, the properties are Parrots Bay and Owl Woods, and the water control structures include our Wilton Road Dam, as well as the Sidman Dam. So many of our municipalities this year have asked us for a multi-year forecast, which you can see the proposed here on the screen. In speaking through our board and to our municipal partners, it has been recommended that there are many challenges that we need to address, and that a phased-in approach with the idea of a declining trend towards a sustainable base budget was the preferred avenue to take. So we've taken that in mind, and we understand that municipalities are also under pressure over the next several years to address challenges. So we feel that the proposed forecast will provide sufficient support to the organization to meet the base needs of our water control structures, our land management, as well as support the compensation and administration facility transition to ensure that we can meet the regulatory requirements of the province. So you can see the general levy, it starts off higher and starts to level off over the years. And then our special levies, we've taken a bit of a different approach. So for our properties, we recommend that we increase them to 2%, and that will allow us to incorporate some of those uncontrollable costs and challenges year over year. And then for our water control structures, our reserves for these particular structures are significantly underfunded to the point where I can barely include the increase in some of those uncontrollable costs. So in order to ensure that we can do the necessary assessments, to ensure that we can update the structures from a health and safety perspective, and we can understand how they function, we need to look for an increase year over year to build it up to a more sustainable level. So that then leads me to, where does Cataraqui conservation look going forward? So you may recall that the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks released some regulations under the Conservation Authorities Act, which has been under review for the last several years. So just briefly, under those regulations, 3 were released, 1 particular to mandatory programs and services, 1 pertaining to the development of a transition plan and cost sharing agreements with municipalities, and then a final 1 pertaining to the rules of conduct on conservation authority land. So currently, the conservation authorities will need to pull together a transition plan to be circulated to municipalities by the end of this year, as well as to the ministry. And this plan is a work plan or a timeline that indicates how we're going to ensure that we meet the regulatory requirements as recently released. So as part of that process, we'll be undergoing an inventory of our programs and services, and we'll be categorizing them into 3 different areas as depicted by the province. The first being mandatory programs, the second being municipally focused programs such as service levels for planning and permitting, and then the third being programs that we put on the watershed for the benefit of the community, such as recreation and education. So that inventory will be brought forward early next year to our board in February, and then we will be doing a consultation process with all of our municipalities to garner feedback. Once we've entered into those conversations, we will be looking to some of our programs for cost sharing agreements, and we'll come back to our municipalities and the staff to start negotiating what the funding patterns and options look like for those programs moving forward. So that'll be a multi-year effort. All of this will need to be in place by January 1st, 2024. So we have some time to transition into that new program. We then move on to our long-term asset management strategy, which we are continually building and looking to ensure that our assets are maintained moving forward, that we build reserves that are sustainable, and that we protect the people and property of the community as best as we can. So with that, I want to thank Council again for the opportunity to speak with you this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on any of the material presented or on the budget specifically. And I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Ferlinato and Mr. Ravel. We appreciate your presentation this evening. Council, do we have questions with regard to the presentation this evening? Anyone? Deputy, go ahead.
Yeah, so just in going over the documents that were provided in our agenda, it appears that we're looking at a surplus this year. From the budget to actual. I didn't see anywhere where it says what that is. Is there a policy for what surplus, where it goes? Some places have policies that it goes into a certain reserve. Some just carry it forward as an operating. I wasn't sure what the policy was with the conservation.
Good question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So we don't have a policy per se, but we do bring options and recommendations to our board to determine what the priority and the needs are for the following year. So because we are transitioning into our administration facility, we have flagged that surplus would go into support that particular transition to help with that financial strategy. We also have a stabilization reserve and a corporate financing reserve to help for some of the ongoing requirements of the organization. And we have thresholds that we try and keep a minimum level at. And so any surplus that we have would make sure we put into those reserves to maintain that level should we need to use them in a future year.
Thank you. Any questions from any other members of council? Ms. Ferlinato, if I may, I note that, forgive me, I don't remember which of the documents that you provided. You have provided quite a few, and we appreciate that. I note that there is quite a bit of variability in I'll say, the level of increase between the municipalities. Can you speak to why there's such variation?
Good question, and through you. So if you're referring to the split or the apportionment over the 11 municipalities, that'll have to do with the impact data that has been used on the growth that has been seen over 2020. So some municipalities like the town of Gananoque show an 8% increase with the proposed budget that we have. And that's because of the significant growth that they've seen in some of their larger scale developments over the last year. So that percentage and that growth calculation, I'm not privy to. That's something that the ministry determines and flags for us. And then we apportion that across our watershed across the 11 municipalities. But that would be the primary driver, is over the last year, the growth differentiation between municipalities.
Excellent. Thank you. Council, any further questions? And I'm seeing nothing further. Okay. I will say I greatly appreciate your presentation this evening. It's always good to have the Conservation Authority come and chat with us. Okay. With that, Council, I will ask for a motion to receive the report for the presentation from Ms. Ferlinato and Mr. Revel. Moved by Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Buderick. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Again, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. We look forward to a long and continued relationship with you, of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Take care, all.
Good evening.
Good evening. With that, Council, we will move forward to the adoption of the minutes and business arising from the minutes of the 56th session of Council on October the 25th. We have the minutes before us. Are there any noted errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve those minutes? I'll go with Councillor Parks and Councillor Buderick. Okay. Any comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We're going to go to 10.2, the confirmation of the minutes and recommendations from the November 1st, 2021 Committee of the Whole. And we have the minutes and the recommendations before us. Council, do we have any questions? Are there any noted errors or omissions? Then can I get a motion to approve those minutes and the recommendation? Councillor Parks, so moved. Do I have a seconder? Deputy, thank you. Okay. Any comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Okay. Motion is carried. We move forward to item 13.1, the Enabling Accessibility Fund Grant from, I believe, Mr. Dickey. Welcome, Mr. Treasurer. Do you have anything to add or highlight with this report?
Nothing in addition to the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions with regard to the grant program? Seeing no questions. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the recommendation then? Deputy, so moved. Councillor Buderick seconds. And any comment? And then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next up, still with Mr. Dickey, is the e-commerce transaction fees. We have the report before us. Mr. Dickey, do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just, yeah, there'll be more information coming as we're working on this project, but we wanted to get some direction because, you know, there is an impact on fees we charge, which council must pass. So we just wanted to kind of get out in front of this and get council's direction on the transaction fees that will be charged, and kind of before we go live with the new system. So just looking for council's feedback.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions on this particular report? No questions? I actually have a question, Mr. Dickey, just for clarity. At this time, the motion is with regard to the receipt of donation, the sale of bag tags and pet licenses only, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so my comment then would be reasonably small items, and I believe the report indicates about an estimation of about $400 per year on the operating budget. Council, any further questions? Can I get a motion, please? Take Councillor Buderick, so moved. Seconded by Deputy. Okay. Any comments from the mover or seconder? Anyone else? And seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Dickey. We move forward to the Community and Customer Services Department, and I believe Ms. Merritt is coming. Or not Ms. Merritt, Ms. McFarland. My apologies.
That's okay.
It's funny, I was looking at your square, but said the wrong name. Right. Ms. McFarland, the report before us is the partial road closures with regard to the Amherst Island seasonal roads, 14.1. Do you have anything to add or highlight with regard to this report at this time?
Not at this time, Your Worship.
You, council, any comments or questions? I see no comments or questions. Okay. We have a recommendation to temporarily close. Okay. And council, who wants to make that motion or an alternate motion? Councillor Buderick, so moved. Okay. Do I have a seconder? Deputy, thank you. Okay. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We move to item 14.2, the Bath Connecting Link Intake 7 and support for the application. We have a report before us. Ms. McFarland, did you have anything to add to this?
Not at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. And council, do we have any questions with regard to this report? I see no questions. And then I'll look for a motion. Anyone wish to make this motion? Deputy, so moved. Thank you. Councillor Buderick, you're seconding. Thank you. Any comments from anyone? Deputy, go ahead.
Just a comment, I'll take 90% any day if they're willing to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anything else? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We move to 14.3, the Accessible Transit Final Progress Report. We have a report with some recommendations. Ms. McFarland, do you have anything to add or to highlight with this report?
Nothing at this time, Your Worship. Just we've been working really hard and hopefully we can put this in place.
Thank you very much. I know that it has been a long road for your department to move on this one. Council, do you have questions? I'm seeing no questions. Oh, I'll go to Councillor Buderick.
Not that it's a big deal, but just on the math on this, the fact that it's going to average out to about 16 trips a day, basically on the math they have for Loyalist. And if you take the city of Kingston into that and say that they have 130 a day on the size comparison to us, and there's only 3 vehicles, I just don't see how 150 trips are going to be made in 3 days, or sorry, in a day with 3 vehicles. So I personally don't think it's going to hit the budget with the same expense that's been predicted, which would be a good thing.
Thank you. Any comment to that, Ms. McFarland?
No.
Okay. Any other questions or comments with regard to the report before us? Deputy, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, through you. In the report, I can't find it right now, but I remember reading where they were saying it was a challenge to be able to fill the positions to be able to provide the service at this time. Is there any, I know we've just got this, so I may be looking for the world here. Was there any discussion on contingency plans or anything, or just we're going to, hopefully they'll be able to fill those positions quickly and be able to provide the service that we're looking for?
Through you, Your Worship, we have, prior to this in place, we've exhausted just about all other options in trying to do the service. The last conversations, they were quite hopeful that they were actually seeing some improvement and progress on their staffing levels. So we're quite hopeful that we will be able to utilize this and start in January through this agreement. January or early in the new year anyways. I'll say that. I don't want to commit to an exact month, but it's looking more promising that we will be able to actually fulfill this.
Thank you. Anything further, Deputy?
Just, I realize that it's basically a universal problem right now. So, I mean, it's not industry related. Really, it's, I was just wanted to double check, seeing how that may become an issue in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anyone else? And then I'll look for a motion. We have the receive, and there are 3 recommendations. Councillor Buderick, so moved.
Yes, all 3. Yes.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Gordon, thank you. Mover, any comment?
Just that I do know how long it has taken, because I've been working on this kind of briefly with the tax commission as well. So I do know how long and the hours that staff has put in. So it's been fantastic.
Thank you. Seconder comment? Anyone else? And I would like to echo Councillor Buderick's comments. We started this process a very long time ago, back when I was on the taxi commission, and I'm very glad to see that it's finally come to fruition, and we've got something moving forward to support those with accessibility needs in our municipality. So I greatly appreciate the efforts of staff on it. And with that, if there's no further comment, I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And we move to Corporate Services Department, our Township Clerk. And we have 15.1, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Planning and Situation Table Coordinator Update. We have a report before us with recommendations. We do have recommendations 1, 2, or 3, but I note that they are 4s. Okay. With that, I see that our CAO has come on screen. Mr. Silver, do you wish to address it, or should I be turning to the clerk?
I do have some additional information to add to Mr. Finnegan's presentation, but I would let the clerk go first because this is her report.
It is Madam Clerk's report. Please go ahead if there's anything you wish to highlight or to add to this report, Ms. Chapman.
No, the report's there. If there's questions, then we're here. We can try and answer them.
Thank you. So I'll go to Mr. Silver.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, just a few things to add to Mr. Finnegan's remarks. So I was part of the original staff group that recommended that we go in this direction, and it was based on the detachment area. So actually, Deserondo and Tyendinaga are also involved in the original plan, or the development of the plan, I should say. So I'm trying to get these in order here. So this was something new and something we all supported. And Lennox and Addington, it involves the local municipalities, not the county at that point. We were the first in, and we, as staff, we expected to be probably the first out, and we expected to be the pilot project. That didn't happen, as Mr. Finnegan explained. And just to clarify, now Pat mentioned the grant. I just want to clarify that Loyalist was not part of that grant, nor did we receive any benefit from that grant. Napanee had a police service board, so they received the grant and did not share that with us. We did pay $28,000, as Mr. Finnegan said. So we just received another invoice for the $23,000, as he stated. I've been trying to clarify with the other municipalities if they've been invoiced and if they've paid it. I don't really have an answer for that for you yet. I did bring this matter up at the CAO's meeting last week. The county CAOs meet once a month. So I informed them that this report was being brought forward, and the CAOs had suggested the concept of the municipal clerks taking on the project of developing the draft plan. So we would do it ourselves. And actually, I do know Dr. Hugh Russell, who Mr. Finnegan mentioned as the advisor to the province. I was working with Bancroft at the time, and Mr. Russell lives in that area. And Bancroft was the first municipality to actually adopt the plan. And I was part of that. And Dr. Russell is certainly an authority when it comes to community safety and well-being. And I'm certain that I could call on Hugh for assistance if needed. So I just wanted to clarify those couple of things for council before you make this decision.
Thank you. And council, you have the report. We had Mr. Finnegan's comments earlier this evening and Mr. Silver's comments tonight. Do you have any questions at this time with regard to the report? I'm seeing no questions. Again, we have a recommendation before us with a couple ors, the last one being or further direction as required, as provided by council. So council, where would you like to go with this? Deputy, go ahead.
I'd like to receive the report and go with number 3 to provide direction for staff to reach out to upstream communication and get clarification on the contract specifics and specifically related to fees, deliverables, and schedules. And I'll speak to it if it's seconded.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Buderick. Thank you. Go ahead, Deputy.
I appreciate the CAOs and the clerk's comments and report. It has highlighted some questions for me. I personally am not clear enough on all of it to make a decision whether to change direction or whether we just have to fine tune the direction we're on. So that's where if we can come back with a little more information and definite answers, then I believe that should be able to give us the information we need to make a solid decision going forward.
Thank you. And seconder, did you have comment?
No, I was on the same page as the deputy.
Thank you. And does the clerk have clarity as to the motion?
Yes, your worship.
Thank you. Any other comments? And then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We move forward to item 16.1, bylaw 2021-071, an agreement with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for National Disaster Mitigation Program. And we now have Ms. Merritt, not Ms. McFarland, with us to comment, or do you have anything to add or highlight to this report at this time, Ms. Merritt?
To your worship, no, there is nothing to add.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions with regard to this? I'm seeing no questions. We have a recommendation to enact and pass. Council, what would you like to do with it? Deputy, go ahead.
Receive and adopt the recommendation.
Receive and adopt. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Gordon, thank you. And mover and seconder, any comments? Anyone else have comment? I'm seeing none. I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Merritt. We move forward to the Emergency Services Department, an open air burning bylaw report to rescind and enact and pass a new open air burning bylaw. We have the chief with us. Chief Stevenson, do you have anything to add to or highlight with this report?
Nothing at this time, your worship.
Thank you. And council, do you have any questions? I'm seeing no questions. And we have the recommendation before us. to rescind and that bylaw 2021-070 be enacted and passed. Do we have a mover for that? We'll go with Councillor Buderick. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gordon, thank you. Mover and seconder, any comments? No? Anyone else have comment? I'm seeing no comments, and I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Chief. We move forward to, are there any notices of motion or direct motion this evening? I'm seeing none. Move forward to the consent agenda. For the purpose of convenience and for expediting meetings, matters of business that are repetitive or routine in nature are included in the consent agenda, and all such matter of business contained in the consent agenda are voted on collectively. Any particular matter of business may be singled out from the consent agenda for debate or separate vote upon the request of any member of council. In the case of a separate vote, the excluded matter of business is severed from the consent agenda. Each and every matter of business contained in the consent agenda is recorded separately in the minutes of the meeting. Is there anything that anyone would like to separate from the consent agenda this evening? I'm seeing nothing. Then can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councillor Gordon, so moved. Do I have a seconder? Deputy, thank you. And any comments on any of the items within the consent agenda? No comments anywhere. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Move forward to updates from members appointed to county council committees or local boards. Does any member of council wish to bring forward information from any of the boards that they represent? I'm seeing nothing. We'll move forward. Okay. Members' privilege. Is there anything under members' privilege that any member of council would like to bring forward this evening? I'm seeing nothing. We are a quiet bunch tonight. Right. With that, we move to the confirmatory bylaw. Can I get a motion to approve the confirmatory bylaw? And Councillor Gordon, seconded by Councillor Parks. Thank you. And any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We have the list of upcoming meeting dates. We note that November the 22nd, we have regular council. December the 6th, we have committee of adjustment and committee of the whole, followed by December the 13th, we have regular council again. Is there anything else to add to that list of upcoming meetings? Seeing nothing further. Oh, I'll go to the clerk.
I believe there's one on December 9th as well for Committee of the Whole for budget. So we have two budget meetings planned for December. I think we just didn't get that on there.
Okay, thank you. Council, you're aware of that? Thank you.
We'll send out meeting invites as well, Your Worship.
Thank you. And with that, then we move to a motion to adjourn. Anyone wish to make that motion? Deputy and Councillor Parks, thank you. And any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is carried, folks. We are adjourned. I thank you very much for those in attendance, those in the audience, and wish everyone a good evening. Take care, all.